At this glittering gala, surrounded by New York's wealthiest elite, they treated her like she was invisible. But what happened next would change her life forever. She spent 3 months saving for that emerald dress. She organized every detail of this charity event. Yet not a single person acknowledged her existence. Her own boss turned away the moment she walked in. The donors she had personally cultivated for 2 years looked straight through her as if she were nothing but furniture. But here is what none of them knew. Standing in the shadows of that terrace, a powerful Mafia boss had been watching her every move. He saw what they all missed: the quiet dignity in her posture, the strength behind her composed smile, the fire burning beneath her graceful silence. And when he finally approached her, everything she thought she knew about her life was about to shatter into a million pieces. Because sometimes the person who truly sees you is the last person you would ever expect. And sometimes, being invisible to the wrong people leads you straight into the arms of someone who will never let you go. This is the story of Eleanora Price, a woman who walked into a room full of people who made her feel worthless and walked out with the most dangerous man in New York falling completely in love with her. This story will remind you that your worth is never determined by those who fail to see it, and that the right person will recognize your value even when everyone else is blind to it. Now, let us begin. The enormous chandelier overhead fractures the light into 1,000 brilliant pieces on the polished marble floor. I am standing on the edge of it all, my hand wrapped around a champagne flute I haven't even sipped. I watch the tiny bubbles ascend in a slow, unending stream, because it is far easier than looking at the faces of people who refuse to see me. My name is Eleanora Price. The dress I am wearing tonight, a deep emerald green that falls gracefully to my ankles, took me 3 months of saving to afford. It is simple, yet I believed it was elegant. I truly thought it would be enough. I imagined that if I just looked the part, stood with perfect posture, and offered a warm smile, then someone, anyone, would finally notice me. I believed someone would finally acknowledge that my presence here was just as valid as theirs. I could not have been more mistaken. The Hartwell Foundation Gala stands as the most celebrated charity function in all of New York City. Beneath these shimmering crystal lights, politicians, famous actors, old money dynasties, and the newly powerful all converge to sign enormous checks and exchange hollow promises. I am here because I am an employee. As the foundation's donor relations manager, I orchestrate the gifts and make certain every wealthy contributor feels personally valued. I know their anniversaries, the names of their children, and the specific vintage of wine they prefer. For 2 long years, I have carefully cultivated relationships that are nothing more than words on paper and polite, sterile emails. But tonight, standing here among them, the cold reality finally settles in. To these people, I am no different than the furniture. I am the voice on the phone and the name at the bottom of a thank you card. I am not a person they feel any need to recognize. A woman cloaked in a stunning red gown glides past, her expensive perfume leaving a sharp, stinging trail in the air, and she doesn't offer a single word. A man in a perfectly tailored suit maneuvers around me as if I were a marble column he had to avoid. Still, I force a smile, because that is the skill I have perfected. Smile. Always be pleasant. Never let them glimpse the hurt they are causing. My own supervisor, Patricia Caldwell, is positioned near the grand staircase, sharing a laugh with a cluster of important donors. She looks absolutely radiant in her silver gown, with jewelry that ignites with light at her slightest movement. She has not made eye contact with me even once this entire evening. When I first walked in, she offered a vague nod in my general direction before immediately turning her back. I was the one who organized this entire event. I personally confirmed each guest, meticulously arranged every single seating chart, and ensured that every last detail was absolutely flawless. Yet, Patricia will be the one to receive all the acclaim, while I journey back to my tiny apartment, utterly alone. I draw a deep breath and begin moving toward the tall doors leading to the terrace. I know the night air will be chilly, but I desperately need it. I need to experience a sensation other than this suffocating, quiet humiliation. When I step through the doors, the terrace is completely deserted. Far below, the city sprawls out in every direction, its countless lights twinkling like a field of fallen stars. I place my untouched champagne flute on the cold stone railing and let my eyes fall shut. The wind gently lifts my hair, and for one brief, perfect moment, I can pretend that I am somewhere else entirely, that I am someone else. I am 28 years old. I possess a communications degree from a university that I am still sending payments to. My apartment is barely larger than a walk-in closet, and I share it with a cat named Darcy, who is most likely curled up on my pillow this very moment. I have fought for every single thing I own, which does not amount to much, but it all belongs to me. Despite all of that, standing here in this moment, I feel more insignificant than I ever have in my entire life. When I finally open my eyes, he is there. He is standing at the opposite end of the terrace, partially concealed by the deep shadows. I had not seen him when I first stepped outside, but now it is impossible for me to look away. He is a tall man with broad shoulders, dressed in a black suit that fits his form like a suit of armor. His dark hair is expertly swept back from a face that looks as if it were chiseled from granite. There is an undeniable presence about him that makes the very air feel charged, heavier, and crackling with electricity. He is watching me. This is not a casual glance or a gaze that is merely passing over me on its way to find something more captivating. He is observing me with a piercing intensity that makes my breath hitch in my throat. His eyes are a pale color, perhaps gray, although I cannot tell for sure in the dim light. They capture and hold my own for a long, suspended moment, and I feel a profound sense of exposure that I cannot begin to articulate. I know I should break his stare. I know I should retreat back inside, but an unseen force keeps me rooted to the spot, pinned by his gaze like a butterfly preserved under glass. And then, he begins to move. He approaches me with a slow, deliberate confidence that tells me he has never been in a hurry for anything in his life. Every single one of his steps is measured and perfectly controlled. When he finally comes to a halt, he is near enough that I can distinguish the faint line of a scar tracing his jaw. I can also see that his eyes are, in fact, gray, the precise shade of a brewing winter storm. "You look as though you would rather be anywhere but here," he says. His voice is deep and smooth, laced with a subtle accent I am unable to identify. It sounds vaguely European, and it lends a secretive quality to every word he speaks. "Is it really that obvious?" I manage to reply. Only to someone who is actually paying attention. I am at a loss for how to respond to that. Not a single person has paid any attention to me throughout this entire night. No one, except for this complete stranger who has emerged from the shadows like a figure from a forgotten dream. "I just needed some fresh air," I finally say. "It was becoming crowded in there." "Crowded," he echoes, and there is an inflection in his tone that tells me he comprehends my true meaning. He understands it was not the crush of physical bodies, but the crushing weight of being utterly ignored, the sheer exhaustion that comes from fighting to matter in a room where you do not. "Who are you?" I ask, the question escaping my lips before I can stop it. I know every single donor on the Foundation's extensive list. I recognize every single face that was meant to attend tonight, but I do not know his. He tilts his head just slightly, his eyes still studying my face. "Does my name matter?" "You are here at a charity gala," I counter. "You have to be someone." "Everyone is someone," he replies, his voice low. "The real question is whether anyone else bothers to notice." His words strike me with the force of a physical blow, gentle, but incredibly precise. He has seen it too, the way these people drift through their own dazzling, a glittering world, completely blind to anyone who does not reflect their own brilliant light. "My name is Eleanor," I say, extending a hand before I can stop myself. He takes it. His grip is solid and firm, his palm radiating warmth against my cold fingers. Dominic. For now, it is just Dominic. He lets go of my hand, but he does not create any distance between us. He stays close, so close that I can smell his cologne, a rich and dark scent like cedarwood and smoke. This should make me uncomfortable. I should invent an excuse and retreat to the safety of the crowded room inside. But I remain perfectly still. "Why are you out here all alone?" I ask him. "You do not strike me as the kind of man who hides." "I am not hiding. I am observing." "What are you observing?" His eyes lock with mine. "Everything. And everyone. The way people show their true selves when they believe no one is paying attention." "And what have you observed about me?" He is silent for a moment. Then very slowly, the corner of his mouth turns upward. It is not exactly a smile, but it is something close. "You are far too good for this room, and you are fully aware of it. That is the reason you left." His words hit something deep within me, a truth I have spent years trying to bury under layers of politeness and patient endurance. I feel my eyes begin to sting, and I turn my head away quickly, blinking with force. "I should probably go back inside," I say. My own voice sounds foreign to me, thin and fragile. "But should you? I am an employee of the Foundation. I have responsibilities to attend to." "You have already done everything you need to do. The event is proceeding without a single issue. No one is going to notice if you remain out here for a little while longer." "How could you possibly know that?" "Because," he states, "they have failed to notice you all night. Why would you expect them to start now?" It should have been painful to hear the truth spoken so bluntly. But for some reason, coming from him, it carries no sting. He was not trying to be cruel. He was merely giving voice to the reality that everyone else had been too well-mannered or too completely indifferent to say aloud. "You noticed me," I say, my voice barely a whisper. "Yes." "Why?" He pauses for a considerable time. When he finally speaks again, his voice is even softer than it was before. "Because you moved through that entire room as if you were carrying an immense weight. Everyone else in there was putting on a performance. You were simply trying to survive." I have nothing to say to that. I cannot comprehend how this man, a total stranger, can see me with such perfect clarity when the people I have worked alongside for 2 years cannot seem to see me at all. The terrace doors swing open behind us, and a wave of laughter washes over the quiet space, shattering the moment. I instinctively take a step back, suddenly conscious of just how near we had been standing and how much time had passed while we were talking. "I should go," I repeat, and this time I truly mean it. Dominic gives a slow, deliberate nod. "Then go." "But Eleanor." I stop, my body halfway turned toward the doors. "Do not ever let them make you feel small. You deserve to take up space in this world." I cannot offer a response. I am incapable of forming words. I just walk back into the gala, my heart hammering against my ribs in a rhythm that has absolutely nothing to do with fear. The remainder of the evening passes by in an indistinct haze. I offer smiles to the appropriate people, nod at all the right times, and silently count down the minutes until I can finally make my escape. Patricia delivers a heartfelt speech, thanking everyone for their incredible generosity. She never once mentions my name. Nobody does. At precisely 11 o'clock, I manage to slip out through a side exit and begin my walk to the subway station. The city streets are now quiet, and the cold air bites through the thin fabric of my coat. On the ride home, I replay our conversation from the terrace over and over again in my mind, attempting to decipher why his words affected me so profoundly. A stranger I had never met before told me that I deserved to take up space. And somehow, that one single sentence held more weight and meaning than 2 years of positive performance reviews and polite, distant acknowledgments. I have no idea who Dominic is. I do not know why he was watching me so intently, or why he made the choice to speak to me. But I cannot escape the powerful feeling that something fundamental has shifted inside of me, that tonight was the very beginning of something that I cannot yet begin to understand. When I finally arrive at my apartment building, Darcy is waiting right by the door, meowing his loud displeasure at my tardiness. I scoop him up into my arms and hold him tightly, burying my face in the soft warmth of his fur. "I met someone tonight," I whisper to him, as if sharing a secret. "I do not know what it all means." Darcy just purrs, completely unimpressed by my dramatic confession. I gently set him down and walk over to my window, gazing out at the vast sea of city lights below. Somewhere out there, in one of those tall, glittering towers, Dominic is likely doing the exact same thing. Or perhaps he has already dismissed me from his thoughts. Maybe I was nothing more than a momentary diversion, just a sad-looking woman on a terrace. But deep down, I do not believe that. The way he looked at me was not fleeting. The way he spoke carried a deliberate weight, a clear intention, and I find myself unable to stop wondering what that intention could possibly be. I slip out of my gown, hanging it with care inside the closet. I move through the nightly rituals, washing my face and brushing my teeth, mimicking the routine of any other evening. Yet, when I finally settle into my bed, sleep is a distant stranger. All I can see are his eyes, the color of storm clouds, of polished steel, of something sharp enough to tear down every defense I have ever constructed around my heart. After being treated like a ghost at that gala, I left with my dignity intact, but I did not leave the same person. And I know, somewhere out in this sprawling city, the man who truly saw me is waiting. This story is for anyone who has ever felt unseen. It is a reminder that you are visible, that you are understood, and that your feelings resonate. If you have ever felt like you were invisible in a crowded room, this is where you belong. Join a community that understands how stories can connect and restore us. 3 days crawl by, and I am back at my desk. I dive into my work, answering a flood of emails and arranging schedules, acting as if the world has not tilted on its axis. Patricia offers a quick thank you for my efforts on the gala, her eyes avoiding mine as she immediately pivots to the next major event on the calendar. I simply nod and smile, taking notes like the capable professional I am paid to be. But a fundamental shift has occurred within me. I can feel it in my posture, in the silent questions that haunt my thoughts late into the night. Do I even deserve to occupy this space? Have I been shrinking myself down all this time, without ever consciously knowing it? The stranger's voice remains in my head, a melody I cannot seem to shake. Then, on Thursday afternoon, a package is delivered directly to my desk. Inside the box is a single perfect white rose standing in a slender crystal vase, with a small cream-colored envelope resting beside it. My coworker, Jennifer, peers over my cubicle wall, her eyebrows arched in curiosity. "A secret admirer?" she whispers. "I really doubt that," I reply, but my hands are not quite steady as I carefully break the seal on the envelope. The card inside is simple, holding only 2 words inscribed in a graceful, flowing script. "Take space." There is no signature, no indication of the sender. But I know, with absolute certainty, who sent it. I try to lose myself in work for the rest of the day, but my mind continually wanders back to Dominic. Who is this man? How could he possibly have known where I work? And what is his reason for contacting me now, so many days after that short, charged exchange on the terrace? Later that evening, just as I am packing up to leave the office, my phone vibrates with a text message from a number I do not recognize. "There's a place on Madison and 53rd named Lucia. Be there at 8. Come if you want answers. Stay home if you're scared." I find myself staring at the words on the screen for what feels like an eternity. Every rational instinct inside me screams that this is a terrible idea. I know nothing about this man or what he is capable of. Meeting a complete stranger this late in a city like New York is the opening scene of every horror story I have ever been told. But there is another voice, a part of me that has been silenced for far too long, that is desperate to know more. It needs to find out why. This man could see me so clearly when I was invisible to everyone else. I go home. I change into a simple, elegant black dress. Nothing extravagant, just an outfit that makes me feel grounded in who I am. I fill Darcy's food bowl, tell my cat not to wait up for me, and then I summon a car to take me to Madison Avenue. Lucia is not what I imagined. From the street, it appears to be just another high-end Italian restaurant, filled with the glow of warm lights and tables set with crisp white linens. But the moment I walk through the door, I sense it is much more than that. The host greets me by name before I even have a chance to speak, and he guides me past the bustling main dining room toward a secluded private area at the very back. Dominic is already there, seated at a quiet table by the window. He stands as I approach, and I am once again overwhelmed by the sheer force of his presence. He commands the space around him without any effort at all. "You came," he says, his voice low. "I was curious, not scared." "A little," I confess, but curiosity was stronger. He motions toward the empty chair across from him, and I take a seat. A waiter materializes beside our table almost instantly, pouring water into our glasses and presenting menus with a quiet, flawless efficiency. As soon as he departs, Dominic fixes his gaze on me with that same unnerving intensity I remembered from the gala. "You're wondering who I am," he states. "It is not a question." "Among several other things," I reply. I take a steadying breath. "The gala. You were not on the official guest list. I already checked." "No," he agrees, "I was not." "Then how did you get past security?" "I get in anywhere I want to be the same way," he explains, by making it understood that stopping me would be a mistake. It is a profoundly arrogant thing to say, yet there is no trace of arrogance in his delivery. He is merely stating a truth about his world, and for some reason, I believe every word. "What do you do for a living?" I ask him. "What business are you in?" "I am in many businesses," he answers. "Real estate, global import and export, private investments." That is incredibly vague. It is also honest. The complete details would require far more than a single dinner to properly explain. I examine his expression, searching for any hint of dishonesty, but all I find is a deep, unshakable certainty. Whatever Dominic's profession is, he operates with total and complete confidence in his own power. "Why did you ask me to come here tonight?" "Because," he says, "I have not been able to stop thinking about you." His directness steals the air from my lungs. I feel a wave of heat rush to my cheeks, and I quickly look down at my hands, suddenly finding it impossible to meet his gaze. "That is a very forward thing to say to a woman you barely know." I prefer honesty over playing games. Life is far too short to waste time pretending. When I finally lift my head, his eyes are still on me, waiting patiently for me to respond. There is no hint of pressure in his gaze, only a quiet calm. He seems willing to wait as long as necessary for me to decide what I want to do next. "Tell me something real," I say at last. "Something that actually matters." He pauses to consider my request for a moment. Then he leans back slightly in his chair, and his entire expression seems to shift, becoming softer. "My mother passed away when I was 12 years old. She was the one person in my entire life who ever made me feel truly safe. After she was gone, I made a vow to myself that I would never be powerless again. Every single choice I have made from that day forward has been about maintaining control, about making sure that no one could ever take anything from me that I was not prepared to give away freely." The weight of his confession settles in the air between us, feeling heavy and profoundly intimate. I never imagined he would answer with such raw honesty. I am not sure I expected him to answer at all. "I am so sorry," I say softly, "about your mother. It happened a very long time ago, but some losses never truly fade away." "No," I agree, "they don't." He tilts his head, his eyes studying my face. "You understand that, don't you?" It is not a question. He has recognized something in me, just as I have recognized something in him. We are two people who have been shaped by absence, who have built fortresses around ourselves to keep out any more pain. My father left when I was 8, I hear myself saying. One morning he was just gone. There was no letter, no explanation. My mother never truly got over it. She worked constantly, pushing herself to exhaustion just to provide for us. And then, when I was 16, her heart just gave out. I have been completely on my own ever since that day. I have no idea why I am telling him these things. I have not talked about my parents with anyone in years. But there is something about this moment, about this man, that makes the words spill out of me like a river bursting through a broken dam. You built your entire life from nothing, Dominic says, his voice filled with a quiet respect, and you managed to do it all by yourself. I did not really have any other choice. There is always a choice, he counters. You could have surrendered. You could have allowed yourself to become bitter and resentful and closed off from the world. Instead, you kept your heart open. That requires a tremendous amount of courage. Tears sting my eyes, and I blink them away furiously. I refuse to cry in front of this man who sees far too much of me. Why me? I ask him. Out of every single person at that gala, why did you even see me? Because you were the only genuine person in that entire ballroom. Everyone else was playing a part, putting on a performance. You were simply there, trying to make it through the night. I recognize that look because I used to be the very same way. Used to be? I have learned how to put on a performance when it is required of me, but I never lose sight of what is real. The waiter returns with our meals, mercifully breaking the spell of the moment. We begin to eat in a comfortable quiet, and I am surprised to find that, despite my earlier anxiety, I am starving. The pasta is exquisite, and the wine is smooth and warm. When we have both finished, Dominic insists on taking care of the check. I choose not to argue. A part of me knows that refusing his gesture would only lead to a needless debate, and I feel too drained for any kind of argument. Outside, the night air is crisp and cold. The city's bright glow has erased the stars from the sky, but I find myself looking up for them anyway, a lifelong habit. Let me drive you home, Dominic offers. I can get a car. I am aware that you can. I am asking if you will allow me to take you. I think about saying no. I think about holding on to my boundaries, protecting myself from whatever this connection might become, but the truth is, I do not want to. For the first time in what feels like a lifetime, I want to let my guard down for someone. Okay, I say. His car is already waiting by the curb, a vision in black, sleek, and impossibly expensive. A driver holds the door open for us, and I slide onto the plush leather seat, suddenly hyper-aware of how close Dominic is sitting next to me. The drive back to my apartment building is mostly silent. He does not attempt to fill the quiet with meaningless chatter, and I am deeply thankful for it. When we pull up, he gets out and walks me all the way to the front door of my building. Thank you for tonight, I say. I did not expect any of this to happen. He offers a small smile. I make my way inside, ascend the staircase that leads to my apartment, and get ready for the rest of the evening. He recounts the story of building his entire world from absolutely nothing, detailing the personal sacrifices he was forced to make and the adversaries he accumulated on his path. He is honest about the darker chapters of his life, though he never lingers on them. He presents them as simple facts, as necessary choices made for the sake of his own survival. In return, I share my own story with him, of juggling several jobs just to get through college, of the deep loneliness that comes with having no family to share important moments with, and of how I taught myself to find joy in simple comforts, like a compelling book, a warm cup of tea, or the comforting weight of Darcy purring on my lap. We are two souls from completely different worlds, yet we connect on a level that seems to defy all logic. He seems to look right through my defenses as if they were made of sheer glass. I can see his secrets swirling around him like mist. Yet, there are deeper truths he keeps hidden, things I've only started to piece together over the last few days. His phone never stops vibrating, and he always finds a reason to step away, taking his calls where I cannot hear. Then there are the men, the ones who materialize wherever we happen to be. They watch us from across the street or from a distant table, their presence a constant silent pressure. They never get close. The way people in restaurants and hotels treat him is another clue. It is not the warm respect you show to a rich man. It is something else entirely, an attentiveness born from pure fear. I have not asked him about any of this. Not yet. I keep telling myself that every person is allowed their privacy, that I have no claim on the whole truth of a man I barely know. But the questions are getting louder in my head, and I know a reckoning is coming. One evening, we were taking a walk beside the Hudson River when Dominic suddenly froze. His entire expression shifted, becoming hard and unreadable, and he pulled me firmly but gently off the path. "What is happening?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We have to go," he said. "Right now." I did not even have a moment to process his words before a black sedan slid to a stop right next to us. A door swung open and Dominic urged me inside with a steady hand on my lower back. Just seconds later, the car was accelerating into the city traffic. Our driver moved through the streets with a skill that was clearly born from years of practice. "Dominic, what is going on?" He did not look at me. His jaw was clenched tight, and his eyes were relentlessly scanning everything we passed through the dark-tinted glass. When he finally spoke, his voice was a low, urgent command. "There are certain people in this city who are not happy about my being here. Every so often they decide to express their disapproval." "What kind of people are you talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling. "The kind of people," he said, "who think that violence is a perfectly good way to negotiate." My heart began to hammer against my ribs. I had suspected it, of course. All the strange little pieces were there, scattered in front of me, just waiting for me to put them together. But hearing him say it out loud made it terrifyingly real in a way my suspicions never could. "Are you involved in things that are against the law?" He finally turned to look at me, and his eyes held a deep sense of resignation. "I am involved in a great many things, Elenina. Some of them operate in a moral gray area. Others do not. That is not really an answer. It is the only answer I am able to give you right now. Once you are safe, I will explain everything to you. But for this moment, right now, I absolutely need you to trust me." Trust. It was such a small word for such an enormous thing to ask. This man was asking me to put my entire life into his hands, to believe he could shield me from a danger I could not even see or understand. Yet when I looked at his face, I did not see a monster. I saw the man who told me that I deserved to exist, to take up space in the world. I saw the man who had held my hand so gently and listened to every one of my stories. He was the man who made me feel truly visible for the first time in so many years. "I trust you," I said, the words coming out stronger than I expected. A wave of relief washed over his features before being replaced by a look of fierce determination. He took my hand, his grip strong and sure, as the car sped on through the dark city. We arrived at a building I had never seen before, a modern glass tower in a section of the city I never had a reason to visit. Dominic led me through a private side entrance, walking past security guards who simply nodded at him. We entered an elevator that would not move without his special key card. The apartment we stepped into was on the top floor. It was huge, a space of glass and steel with a view that could steal your breath away, but I could hardly appreciate the luxury. My attention was completely fixed on Dominic, on the powerful tension that seemed to radiate from his entire body. "You will be safe in this place," he told me. "Nobody will be able to get to you here." "What about you?" I asked. "Are you going to be safe?" A small smile touched his lips, but it held no real warmth. "I have made it through much worse than this." "That does not answer my question." "I know," he said. He walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window and stared down at the sprawling city lights below. We stood in silence for a long, heavy moment. Then, without turning to face me, he finally began to speak. "For many generations, my family has been involved in certain types of businesses. When my mother passed away, my grandmother pleaded with me to get out, to go somewhere else and build a clean life for myself. But I was just so angry. I needed to get revenge on the cruel world that had stolen her from me. So I chose to stay. I learned the business. I climbed the ladder. The Mafia, I whispered the word. I had thought it in my mind before, but this was the first time I had ever dared to say it out loud. That is one of the names they call it. There are others. What is important is that I became powerful, and being powerful creates enemies. Tonight, one of my enemies made a choice to send me a clear message. What kind of message? He finally turned around, his eyes locking with mine. The kind of message that lets me know they are aware of you. His words felt like a punch to the gut. I stumbled back a step, reaching a hand out to steady myself against the cold wall. Me? Why on earth would anyone care about me? Because I care about you, he said simply. And in the world I live in, that makes you a very valuable target. My mind flashed back to the gala, to the invisible woman I had been, standing all alone on that terrace. I thought about the single rose left on my desk, the quiet dinners, the deep conversations, all the little moments that had built this connection between us. I thought about how methodically, how patiently, this man had come into my life. Did you know something like this could happen? I knew it was a distinct possibility. I was just hoping I would have more time. Time for what? Time to show you the real me. To give you the chance to decide for yourself if I am someone who is worth this kind of risk. I just stared at him, this complicated man who had completely shattered my quiet world in just a few short weeks. I knew I should have been furious. I should have been demanding answers, and explanations, and promises that he could protect me from the storm he had dragged me into. But anger was not the emotion rising inside me. What I felt was something far more potent and far more dangerous. I already made my decision, I said, my voice soft but steady. That very first night when we were on the terrace, some part of me saw a kindred spirit in you. I could not explain it then. I am not even sure I can explain it now. But I know for certain that whatever this is between us, I am not prepared to just walk away from it. In 3 long strides, Dominic closed the distance between us. He cupped my face with his hands, his intense eyes searching mine for any sign of doubt or fear, for any hint that I did not truly mean what I had just said. He must have found what he was looking for, because the very next thing I knew, his mouth was covering mine. The kiss was not soft or gentle. It was a fierce and desperate claiming, filled with all the powerful emotions that neither of us had been able to put into words. I clung to his shoulders, pulling him even closer. I wanted more. I needed more. I needed him. When we finally broke apart for air, we were both breathing heavily. He pressed his forehead against mine, his hands still gently holding my face. I will protect you, he vowed, his voice thick with emotion. I do not care what it costs me, and I do not care what I have to do. You are mine now, Elenena, and I never ever let go of what is mine. The raw possessiveness in his tone should have terrified me, but it did not. Instead, it wrapped around me like a shield, making me feel safer than I had ever felt in my entire life. Then do not ever let go, I whispered back to him, and he did not. The following weeks were lived in a strange new reality, suspended between 2 completely different worlds. On one side, there was the life I had before Dominic, the quiet routine of my job, my small apartment, and the simple act of getting through each day alone. On the other side was the life I was now creating with him, a world filled with unbelievable luxury, constant danger, and intense feelings I was still trying to understand. I kept going to my job at the foundation, even though I knew it was only a matter of time before I had to leave. Patricia was starting to see the change in me. She noticed my distraction, the way my eyes darted to my phone during our meetings, how I now left exactly at 5 o'clock instead of working late. She never said a word about it, but I could feel her silent disapproval like an icy draft. Dominic was insistent that I have security. 2 men started to follow me everywhere, always discreet, but always there. They would wait in a car outside my office building, drive me home from work, and then stand guard outside my apartment building through the night. I thought I would hate the constant intrusion on my privacy, but I soon grew to appreciate their quiet, steady protection. The situation with the people who were against Dominic remained dangerously tense. He refused to give me any of the details, always saying that he needed to keep his business and his personal life completely separate, but I could see the heavy price it was costing him. I saw it in the late hours he kept, heard it in the hushed phone calls, and watched the weight on his shoulders seem to get heavier with every passing day. One night, I was at his penthouse when he got a phone call that made all the color drain from his face. He listened intently, not saying a single word, then ended the call and turned to me. His expression was one I had never seen on him before. "I have to get out of the city for a couple of days," he said, his voice strained. "There is some business I have to take care of that cannot be done over the phone." "What kind of business?" "The kind that I cannot tell you about. Not right now." I wanted to fight him on it, to demand that he be honest with me, but I could see the deep exhaustion and stress etched into his face. Whatever was happening, it was incredibly serious. Arguing with him now would only make everything that much harder for him. "Just be careful," I said instead, my voice soft. He walked across the room and wrapped me in his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I will come back to you, Elenina. I give you my word. You had better keep it." He then kissed me, slow and deep and lingering, as if he were trying to memorize the exact feeling of my lips. And then he was gone, leaving me all alone in his enormous, silent apartment. I was surrounded by wealth, but I felt more empty than I had in many months. The days that followed his departure were the longest and most difficult of my entire life. Dominic sent text messages whenever he had a chance. They were always short and to the point, messages that told me so little and yet meant so much. "I am okay. Thinking about you. Be back soon." To keep my mind busy, I poured all of my energy into my work. The foundation was in the process of launching a new project, a scholarship fund for students from disadvantaged backgrounds, and I immediately volunteered to be the one to lead the outreach campaign. It provided me with a clear purpose, a solid reason to get myself out of bed each morning. But every night, when I was alone in my quiet apartment, the crushing worry would always creep back in. I played out 1,000 different terrible scenarios in my head, each one more frightening than the one before. What if something terrible happens to him? What if he is never able to come back? Then, on the fourth day, my phone rang with a call from a number I did not recognize. When I picked up, the voice that spoke was not Dominic's. "Miss Price, we have not had the pleasure of meeting, but I assure you I know quite a lot about you." The voice was cold and slick, carrying an accent that was similar to Dominic's, but where his accent had a certain warmth to it, this man's was sharp and full of menace. "Who is this?" you might ask. Think of me as a friend of Dominic's, or, more accurately, a former friend. These relationships can be so complicated, you know. My fingers tightened their grip on the phone, my knuckles turning white. "What is it that you want from me?" I only wanted to make a proper introduction. "My name is Victor Moretti. Dominic and we share a very long and detailed history, though I have a strong feeling he has not bothered to tell you anything about me. He has not told me about a lot of things. No, I am sure he has not. Dominic has always been very selective about the information he chooses to share. It is one of his most infuriating traits. I should end this call. I should contact Dominic's security team and tell them about this conversation. But a different instinct keeps me listening. It is a powerful need to understand that is stronger than my fear. "Why have you called me?" "Because I need you to understand exactly what you have walked into, Miss Price. Dominic is not the man he appears to be. He has committed terrible acts in his quest for power. He has done things that would make you run screaming if you ever learned the truth. Every person has a past. That is true. But not every person's past is filled with eliminating rivals, destroying entire families, and constructing an empire built on the suffering of other people. Dominic may dress in expensive suits and speak to you of love, but underneath it all, he is a predator. And predators never change their nature. They only find new prey. The words are crafted to inflict a wound, and they find their mark. I think of Dominic's gentle touch, his whispered promises, and the profound way he makes me feel protected and cherished. Could the same man really be capable of the horrors this stranger is describing? Why are you telling me all of this? Because I think you deserve to know the truth. And also because Dominic has something that is mine, something I fully intend to take back. What could he possibly have that belongs to you? Victor lets out a laugh, a sound completely lacking any warmth. Ask him about the Corsetti fortune, and then ask him what truly happened to my brother. After that, you will finally understand. The line goes silent. I stand frozen inside my apartment, the phone still pressed tightly against my ear. My thoughts race, replaying everything Victor said, desperately trying to distinguish the truth from his careful manipulation. He is without a doubt an enemy, a person who wants to cause Dominic pain. But what if his terrible accusations are actually based in fact? What if the man I am falling in love with is genuinely capable of these monstrous things? I cannot find the answers to these questions by myself. I must speak with Dominic, but Dominic is not here. And until he gets back, I am left with nothing but crippling doubt and fear. That night, I find no sleep. I just sit by the window, watching the city lights flicker, and I think about everything I know and everything I do not. I think about the gala, the terrace, and the stranger who truly saw me when no one else even looked. I think about the single rose on my desk, the quiet dinners, the soft kisses, the feeling of absolute safety in his strong arms. And I think about what it really means to love a man whose entire world is constructed from shadows. If you are feeling the burden of this story, if Eleanor's journey has resonated with you, please leave a comment that says, "Love is worth the risk." I want to know you are here, sharing in this moment with me. When Dominic comes back 5 days later, I can tell right away that something is different. There is a deep weariness in his eyes that was not there before, a certain heaviness to all his movements. "It is handled," he says when I ask him about his trip. "The situation has been resolved." Resolved in what way? He studies my face for a long moment, and I can almost see him weighing his words, trying to decide how much of the truth I can bear. There were individuals who wanted to challenge my leadership. They have now been persuaded to reconsider their position. Persuaded? Yes. I want to push him for more details, but the memory of Victor's phone call holds me back. If I ask about the Corsetti fortune or about his brother, I will expose the fact that I have been speaking with Dominic's enemies. I have no idea how he would react to that information. So instead, I ask an entirely different question. Someone called for me while you were away. A man who called himself Victor Moretti. Dominic's expression instantly becomes hard as stone. What did he tell you? He told me that you have done terrible things, that you are not the man you seem to be. And do you believe what he said? I draw in a slow breath. I do not know what I should believe. I only know what I have seen and felt with you. And what has that been like? It has been overwhelming, confusing, and beautiful. Some of the visible tension fades from his shoulders. He walks across the room and gently takes both of my hands in his. Victor is my cousin. We were raised together, we trained together, we were supposed to inherit everything together. But when it was time for the family to select a new leader, they selected me. Victor has never been able to forgive that decision. He holds me responsible for everything that has ever gone wrong in his life. He claimed you destroyed his brother. Dominic's jaw clenches tight. His brother Marco attempted to seize control of the organization with violence. He made direct threats against the lives of everyone I held dear. I did what was necessary to protect my people. What is that supposed to mean? It means that Marco is no longer a threat, and it means Victor has dedicated the last 5 years of his life to trying to destroy me as revenge. I study his face, searching for any sign of a lie. I look for the monster that Victor described, but all I can find is a man who carries an impossible burden, a man forced to make impossible choices in a world that gives no easy answers. Why did you not tell me any of this before now? Because I wanted you to get to know me first. The real me, not the version of me twisted by the words of my enemies. And who is the real you? He raises my hands to his lips and kisses my knuckles, just as he did on that very first night outside my apartment. I am a man who has done very difficult things. I am a man who has certainly made mistakes, but I am also a man who would burn the entire world to the ground just to keep you safe. That is who I truly am, Eleonora. Everything else is simply noise. I desperately want to believe him. I want to trust that this love I feel is not completely misplaced, that the man I am falling for is truly worthy of that fall. But trust is not a thing that can just be given away. It has to be built, one piece at a time, through actions and over time. Then show me, I say quietly. Show me exactly who you are. And so he does. The weeks that came after were an education. Dominic opened up his world to me in ways I had never anticipated, showing me the legitimate businesses he operates alongside his much darker operations. He showed me real estate developments that were transforming forgotten neighborhoods into vibrant communities. He showed me import companies that brought in goods from all over the globe. He showed me investment firms that funded new startups and created thousands of jobs. Not everything I am involved in is illegal, he explains one afternoon during a tour of one of his major construction sites. The majority of it, actually, is completely legitimate. The other parts are a necessity for now. For now. I am working my way towards something, Elena. A future where my family no longer needs the old ways to survive. But a transition of that scale takes time. It demands patience, careful planning, and sometimes very difficult compromises. I am starting to understand the sheer complexity of his world. He is not just a criminal, and he is not just a businessman. He is a man who is trapped between two different worlds, trying to forge a path that can honor his family's past while building an entirely different future. And he wants me to be a part of that future. I never thought I would find someone like you, he admits to me one night, as we lie together and watch the city lights from his penthouse windows. I had come to accept that my life would always be a solitary one, that a woman who could truly understand my world simply did not exist. Maybe she does not understand all of it. Maybe she is still learning as she goes. That is enough for me. It is more than enough. His hand finds mine in the dark, his fingers lacing through mine. I can feel the roughness of his skin, the scars that hold stories he has not told me yet. And I suddenly realize I am not afraid of those stories anymore. I want to hear every single one. But peace, as I am quickly learning, is a fragile thing in Dominic's world, and it can be shattered without any warning. It happens on a Tuesday. I am at the foundation, reviewing applications for our new scholarship program, when Patricia asks me to come into her office. Elena, we must talk. Her expression is perfectly neutral, but I have worked for her for long enough to see the tension hiding just beneath the surface. Of course. What is this all about? I have received some concerning information regarding your personal life. My stomach clenches into a cold knot. What sort of information? Questions have been brought to my attention about your associations, specifically concerning your relationship with a man by the name of Dominic Valente. Dominic's family name. I had heard him use it on very rare occasions, as he preferred only his first name in most settings, but clearly someone has been investigating. I fail to see how my personal relationships have any relevance to my work here at the Foundation. Under normal circumstances, they would not be, but the Hartwell Foundation is entirely dependent on its reputation. We cannot afford any association with certain elements. certain elements. Patricia shifts in her chair, clearly uncomfortable. I have been presented with evidence that suggests Mr. Valente has deep connections to organized criminal activities. If this information is true, your continued employment here becomes a serious problem. Your continued work with us could present a serious risk to the Foundation's reputation. I feel the space around me constrict, the very air growing heavy. Everything I have dedicated my life to, the entire career I built from the ground up, the hard-won respectability I fought so hard to earn, is now in jeopardy because I chose to love a man they deemed inappropriate. Who provided you with this so-called evidence? I am not allowed to disclose that, she replies. But I already know the answer. It has to be Victor Moretti. He is not satisfied with attacking Dominic head-on. Now he is systematically targeting everyone and everything that Dominic holds dear. I need some time to handle this, I say, my voice remaining remarkably steady only by pure force of will. Could you possibly give me until the end of the week? Patricia pauses to consider my request, then she finally nods. You have until Friday. But Elena, if you are unable to get this situation under control, I will have no choice but to terminate your employment. I truly hope you can understand my position. I understand it completely. I walk back to my desk and begin to collect my belongings with a numb, mechanical precision. Jennifer watches me with a look of deep concern, but she refrains from asking any questions. I offer her no explanations. The moment I step out onto the street, I dial Dominic's private number. Elena, what is it? I can hear the worry in his voice. We have to talk right now. An hour later, I find myself in his office, pacing back and forth across the room as he listens intently to my retelling of the conversation with Patricia. By the time I finish my story, his expression has become a thunderous storm. Victor, he says, this has his methods written all over it. Existences. He is attempting to isolate me completely, to sever my connections to my ordinary life until I have no other choice but to run to him. That is never going to happen. How can you be so certain? Dominic gets up from his chair and walks over to where I am standing. He gently places his hands on my shoulders, compelling me to look directly into his eyes. Because I will never allow it to happen. Victor has seriously miscalculated. He assumes that by attacking you, he will somehow weaken me, but he has no comprehension of what you truly mean to me. He fails to understand that I would set his entire world on fire before I would ever let him lay a single hand on you. The raw intensity in his tone is almost frightening. But just beneath that blazing fire, I can see something else. I can see fear. He is terrified of losing me, in the same way that I am terrified of losing the life I have worked so hard to build. What is your plan? What I should have done many years ago. I am going to end this for good. During the next 3 days, I witness a profound change in Dominic. The caring man who brought me coffee in the morning and gently kissed my forehead seems to vanish, replaced by someone harder, colder, and far more focused. He dedicates hours to meetings with men whose faces I do not know, their conversations a flurry of rapid Italian as they formulate plans I am not allowed to hear. I want to be of some help, but he flatly refuses. This is my war to fight, Elena. I was the one who brought this threat into your life, and I will be the one to remove it. The only thing I ask of you is to trust me, and so I put my trust in him, and I wait. On Thursday evening, Dominic arrives at my apartment. He appears utterly drained. Dark shadows have formed under his eyes, and his jaw is clenched with stress. But the moment his eyes land on me, a part of that hardness in him seems to melt away. It is almost finished, he tells me. By tomorrow, all of this will be over. What is going to happen tomorrow? A meeting. Victor and I are going to finally resolve our issues. Is that dangerous? He pauses for a moment, and I know the answer before he even says a word. There is always a risk, but I have taken every necessary precaution. My people are fully prepared for anything. Then let me come with you. Absolutely not. Dominic, I cannot just sit here and wait while you willingly walk into a dangerous situation. I have to be there. I have to see for myself that you are all right. The best way for me to ensure your safety is to keep you as far away from Victor as possible. This is not a request for your permission. I am telling you what is going to happen. We stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills, two unyielding forces refusing to bend. Finally, a long sigh escaped Dominic's lips. You are, without a doubt, the most infuriating woman I have ever known. I will choose to take that as a compliment, I said. He looked surprised. You would do that? He drew me into his arms, holding me against his body with a secure tightness. I could feel the steady, powerful rhythm of his heart against my cheek, a calm anchor in the storm that was building around us. If you come with me, he began, his voice low and deliberate, you must follow my instructions to the letter. You will remain exactly where I place you, and if I give the order to run, you will run without hesitation. No second thoughts, and absolutely no attempts at being a hero. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, I do. Promise me, Eleanor, I promise. He leaned back, his eyes searching mine, looking for any hint that my words were untrue. Whatever he found in my gaze seemed to be enough, because he gave a slow, deliberate nod. Then we will face this evil together. Our meeting was set for a deserted warehouse down by the waterfront, a spot specifically chosen for its isolation and lack of allegiance. As our car moved closer, I saw other dark vehicles already parked in the shadows. Men in severe black suits stood like statues around the building's edge. Dominic's hand found mine, his grip firm and reassuring as we stepped through the massive doors. The inside of the warehouse was a cavernous, empty space. Cold industrial lamps hanging from the ceiling threw distorted, menacing shadows across the raw concrete floor. Right in the middle of that vast emptiness, a single table stood with two chairs positioned to face one another. Victor Moretti was already there, waiting for us. He was a tall man, just like Dominic, with a presence that filled the room. Similar facial features that hint at their shared lineage. But while Dominic's eyes are a warm shade of gray, Victor's are a chilling ice blue, utterly empty of any emotion. Cousin, Victor greets him, getting up from his chair. And the lovely Miss Price. I must admit, I did not think you would bring her along. Eleanor is an important part of my life now. She has every right to be here to witness what is about to happen. A smile spreads across Victor's face, but it is not a warm or pleasant expression. How very romantic. So tell me, Miss Price, did Dominic happen to tell you the real reason we are gathered here today? Did he mention the empire that was founded on absolute betrayal? Did he tell you about all the blood that stains his hands? He told me the truth, I reply, my voice unwavering. Which is certainly more than you have ever done. Victor's eyes narrow to slits. The truth. What an interesting idea. Let's just see if your beloved Dominic is prepared to share the entire truth. He slips a hand inside his jacket and pulls out a thick folder, tossing it onto the table between them with a thud. It is all in there. The proof of everything you have ever done, every shady deal, every single elimination, every family you have left in ruins. I have to wonder how your lovely girlfriend will feel about you after she sees it all laid out in black and white. Dominic does not even flinch. I have never tried to hide the man I am, Victor. The main difference between you and me is that I accept full responsibility for the choices I make. You just hide behind your grudges and blame the rest of the world for your own failures. My failures? You stole everything that was rightfully mine. The position that I should have held, the resources, the respect. And after all that, you had my own brother eliminated when he attempted to take it back. Marco made his own decision. He chose a path of violence, and in the end, violence is what he found. The atmosphere in the room is stretched so tight it feels like it could snap at any moment. The men on both sides of the conflict begin to shift uneasily, their hands drifting closer to their hidden firearms. I can feel the entire situation teetering on the razor's edge. Then, Victor lets out a cold laugh. Do you know what I find truly amazing? Even after all this, you still believe you are in control of the situation. You honestly still see yourself as the hero in this whole story. He shakes his head with a slow, deliberate motion. But you are not. You are just another monster, Dominic, and eventually, all monsters get exactly what they deserve. He snaps his fingers, and in an instant, the warehouse is filled with sudden motion. More men emerge from the deep shadows, far more than I had anticipated, and they surround us from every direction. Dominic's men react in a heartbeat, pulling out their weapons, but they are clearly outnumbered. Did you honestly believe I came all this way just to negotiate with you? Victor taunts. This meeting was never about having a conversation. This was always about bringing your reign to a final, definitive end. Dominic immediately shoves me behind him, using his own body as a shield. Eleanor, when I give the word, you run. Remember the promise you made me. I am not going to leave you here, and you are not going to die for me. The tense standoff feels like it lasts for an eternity, though it was likely only a few seconds. I can hear the frantic pounding of my own heart in my ears. I can feel pure terror trying to claw its way up my chest. This is the end. This is how it all concludes. And just then, the main doors of the warehouse burst open with incredible force. Men dressed in full tactical gear swarm into the building, moving with the kind of fluid precision that only comes from military training. These are not Dominic's people, and they are certainly not Victor's. They are something else entirely. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Everybody get on the ground now. The ensuing chaos is a confusing whirlwind of shouting and frantic movement. Victor's men begin to scatter, some choosing to surrender while others make a desperate attempt to escape. Dominic pulls me down behind the heavy table, covering my body with his, as federal agents methodically sweep through the entire building. When the commotion is finally over, I look up and see Victor Moretti in handcuffs, being escorted toward a waiting government vehicle. His face is a contorted mask of pure rage and utter disbelief. What just happened? I whisper. Dominic helps me get back to my feet. His own expression is complicated, a mixture of profound relief and something else I cannot quite decipher. I cut a deal, he explains in a quiet voice. I did it weeks ago, when I realized that Victor would never give up until one of us was completely destroyed. I reached out to some specific contacts I have in law enforcement. I offered them Victor and his entire illegal operation in exchange for guaranteed protection for you and an opportunity for me to transform my business into completely legitimate enterprises. You informed on him. It was the only viable way to end this conflict without any more bloodshed. Victor would have relentlessly kept coming after us, constantly threatening everyone I care about. This way, he is put away for a very long time, and I finally get the chance to build the future I have been working so hard to create. I just stare at him, this man of so many layers. This man had surprised me at every single turn. He was someone who chose harmony over control, affection over authority, and a hopeful future over a haunted past. You went through all this for my sake. I did this for our sake, he corrected. For the kind of life we could build with each other. It is the life I desire more than anything else in this world. Hot tears began to trace paths down my cheeks, and I made no effort to wipe them away. I wrapped my arms around his neck and held on with a desperate strength, as if he might vanish into thin air. I love you, I whispered into his chest. I love you so much, Dominic. His arms tightened around me, holding me closer. I love you as well, Eleanor, more than I ever believed was possible for me to feel. Outside, the night air was cold, filled with the sharp flash of red and blue lights and the clipped official tones of voices. But in that one moment, sheltered in each other's arms, we felt only warmth. We felt protected. We had finally and truly come home. 6 months after that night, the season of spring had bloomed across the city, completely transforming the drab gray streets into beautiful promenades shaded by cherry blossom trees. I was strolling through Central Park with Dominic right by my side. Darcy, our dog, trotted on a leash between us, making soft noises of protest about the sheer insult of being made to exercise. An incredible amount had changed since that evening in the warehouse. Victor was in custody and awaiting his trial, his entire network of criminal activity taken apart by federal investigators. Dominic had been true to his word, carefully converting his remaining enterprises into fully legitimate businesses. He worked closely with the authorities to make sure that every last detail was handled properly. The path had not been simple. Many of his old associates had turned away from him. Forging new, trustworthy partnerships was a slow and difficult process, but he faced every single obstacle with that same unyielding resolve that had first captivated me. As for my own life, I resigned from the foundation 2 months after the final confrontation with Patricia. It was not because they forced me out, but because it was my own choice to walk away. Dominic gave me the support I needed to launch my very own nonprofit organization, one that is focused on creating educational programs for children who come from troubled homes. We named it the Second Chance Foundation, and it has become the most deeply fulfilling work I have ever undertaken. "You seem very quiet today," Dominic noted, as we settled onto a park bench that looked out over the water. "I am just thinking about how radically different my world is now compared to just 1 year ago." "Is that a good kind of different or a bad kind?" I turned my head to look at him fully. This incredible man had become my closest partner, my staunchest defender, my very own home. Different. And completely amazing. He offered a smile, and the simple act still had the power to reshape his entire expression. The severity that had once been his defining feature had gradually softened over the past months, replaced by a deep and genuine warmth. He was still a man of immense power, still intimidating when the situation demanded it. But he was also exceptionally kind, patient, and completely devoted to me. "I have a little something for you," he said, his hand reaching inside his jacket pocket. My heart did a little flip. "Dominic, do not make me nervous." "It is not a ring," he clarified with a smile that grew even wider. "Not yet, anyway." He took out a small box covered in velvet and opened it, revealing a beautiful, delicate pendant inside. It was a silver butterfly, and its wings were inlaid with tiny diamonds that sparkled in the afternoon sun. "A butterfly," I breathed. "You broke free from your own cocoon, Eleonora. You completely transformed from a person who felt like she was invisible into a woman who captures everyone's attention just by being herself. This is a small token to remind you of the incredible journey you have made." Tears started to well up in my eyes as he carefully fastened the silver chain around my neck. I raised my hand to touch the pendant, feeling its gentle weight against my skin. "It is so beautiful," I said, "but not nearly as beautiful as you are." I leaned forward and gave him a kiss that was slow and full of sweetness, not worrying for a second about who might be watching us. We were finished with hiding. We were done pretending to be anything less than exactly who we were. We were two people who had discovered one another against unbelievable odds and had managed to construct something true and lasting from the broken pieces of their pasts. When our lips parted, Dominic took my hand and held it within his. "There is one more thing that I would like to talk about. More surprises in a way. I have been doing a lot of thinking about what comes next, about our future together." My heart began to pound inside my chest. What about our future? "I want to create a family with you, Eleanor. Not in the next day or the next month, but sometime down the road. I want to have children who will grow up never knowing the kind of world that I came from. I want to have a house that is filled with constant laughter and boundless love and all of the wonderful things that you and I never had when we were young." "Dominic," he started, "you do not need to give me an answer right now. I just need you to understand what I am hoping for and what I am building towards. Every single honest deal I make, every legitimate partnership I form, all of it is for that future, for us." I squeezed his hand, my grip tightening. "I want that more than anything. I have wanted that since the night you looked at me and said I deserve to take up my own space in the world." You gave me back the courage to dream again, Dominic. And inside all of my dreams, you are always there with me. He pulled me in close, draping his arm protectively around my shoulders as we sat and watched the small boats glide across the lake's surface. Darcy had finally abandoned his protests and had drifted off to sleep by our feet, a tiny furry symbol of the quiet, domestic life we had built. Do you remember the night of the gala? Dominic asked. The night that we first met. Of course I do. I had been watching you for a full hour before I finally walked over. I observed how the others treated you, how their eyes seemed to look straight through you as if you were not even there. And I saw you handle all of it with such incredible composure, such quiet strength. I understood in that moment that you were not like anyone else, that you were someone truly worth getting to know. You saw a quality in me that I was completely unable to see in myself. I did not show you anything that was not already a part of you. We sat together in a peaceful, easy silence, just allowing the beautiful afternoon to happen all around us. People jogged along the path nearby. Families were laying out blankets on the grass for picnics. Little children were laughing as they chased squirrels among the trees. It was just ordinary life, made of ordinary little moments. But it felt extraordinary because we were able to share all of it together. Thank you, I said, my voice soft. For what? For seeing me. For being patient. For being courageous enough to approach a woman who was standing all by herself on a balcony. Thank you for being courageous enough to say yes to me. I thought about everything we had survived together. The overwhelming fear and the constant uncertainty, the serious danger and the shocking discoveries, and all the times I wondered if I was making the worst mistake of my entire life. I thought about just how close we had been to losing one another, how many huge obstacles had stood between us. And then, I thought about how none of that mattered anymore, because we were right here. We were a team. We were creating something truly magnificent from the embers of our damaged histories. I was treated as if I were invisible at that party, yet I left that night with my head held high. I could not have known at the time that someone special was watching me, that my whole world was on the verge of changing in ways I never could have foreseen. But I know now. I understand that sometimes the most profound love stories start in the most unlikely of places. I know that being truly seen by the right person has the power to change your entire world. That quiet composure in the face of disrespect is not a weakness, but a profound strength. And I have learned that home is not some physical place. Home is a person who chooses to be with you, who protects you, and who loves you for exactly the person you are. I have finally found my home, and I am never, ever letting it go. If you have been watching up to this point, it is because you truly connected with this story. Please leave a comment that says, "I watched this far," so that I can get to know you and see who is really a part of our story community here on this channel. And if this story resonated with you, please show your support with a like and share it with someone you know who might need this message. Your encouragement means the world to us and allows us to make more stories that show you that love, grace, and second chances are always within reach. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, and I will see you again in our next story. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing in the power of love to turn even the most hopeless nights into the most beautiful new beginnings. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to bring you meaningful stories and valuable life lessons. Thank you for being part of our community.